There's power in a drum beat on a hill above the sea. Power in the voice of a supporter. But it all amounts to nothing. Together we don't sing. There's power when we're North Boise. ST loyal forever. Someday in North County. Desert to islands. Get loud now, you and me. All our voices strong together as we cheer on our team. There is power when we're North Boise.
Initially, my kind of start into connecting with this club was through a meeting at L. Smith, where I met Warren. I introduced myself. I told him kind of my background in supporter culture and supporter groups with LAFC, and he said, you need to talk to Ricardo, and then Ricardo said, you need to talk to Steve and Daryl.
I think it was about a week or two beforehand was the point where Ricardo texted Steve and I and said, you need to touch base with this guy, Jerry Jimenez. He came to our listening session. He's an LAFC supporter. And I said, yeah, I'm friends with that guy on Facebook, but I've never actually met him.
The first meeting there at Coronado, I remember not knowing what I was going to walk into. It was nobody that I really knew at that point.
You know, I'd been Facebook friends with him for long enough to have seen his feed and how completely black and gold it was with LAFC, everything all over it. And I had a chance to see how his feed unfolded and how the buildup of his involvement in the 3252 kind of really absorbed his whole family's life and the commute up to LA. And it makes you a bit envious not having a team down here for the long time, being friends with somebody like that who got a chance to be a part of building something from the very beginning, building it all the way up to standing in your own stadium, standing in your supporter section, making this huge impact and making a statement as far as just across club soccer in America and being kind of that benchmark that everybody looks at now. So when Ricardo had actually said, you need to touch base with this guy, he came to our listening session. For me, it was more a matter of, I've seen this guy's Facebook feed. I know that he's passionate. I didn't know whether or not he would really be all that into this team or this idea, because he already has this thing in his life that is so central to his interaction with the game right now. So I didn't know, because I'd never met him, whether or not that was something that he was even that interested in. Knowing that he had gone to the listening sessions and he'd been Jerry, he'd been opinionated and honest and real with everyone, and had expressed that interest, it was like, okay, all right, I need to talk to this guy, and we need to make an effort to bring this guy in.
I know the moment I met Daryl, I knew that I wanted to hang out with the guy and be his friend, just because of his passion for pretty much everything that he does. Just like that first initial conversation with him, it was obvious that he was in it for the right reasons, which was huge for me.
You kind of know those people that are good people that you really have a connection with kind of right away, and he was one of them. So we had quite a few others that were there that afternoon too, but Jerry was the one that I think I met that I hadn't ever met or shook hands with before, and that was it's cool to be able to see people that are passionate about the game and their community, and to share that kind of bond with the people. That's the best part about this whole thing.
Daryl and I always knew that we didn't have all the answers, and we needed help to grow this and to make this what it is, right?
After that Coronado meeting was the start of the conversations between Steve and I, that we started saying, we can't just be us anymore. It can't just be the two of us. We have to bring in a couple other people.
We're willing to put the work in. We can organize meetings and call breweries and say, hey, can we have your back patio? And maybe 20 or 30 people will show up. But that doesn't mean we have the answers.
And then having met Jerry, it was like, you can't put a price on the fact that this guy has already gone through and done so much of the stuff that we're talking about doing, and on a huge level. You can't put a price on that perspective and that experience. So he was immediately the other person that this is the guy that needs to come into the fray here.
I'm Drew.
And we had met Drew through Soccer City. He was involved.
And we knew how reliable and organized he is and creative he is.
But then he was at that first Coronado meeting, and he was talking to us in our ear about supporter culture a lot. So we had talked to him and said, look, Daryl and I are the two people right now, but we need more help. So that's when we kind of brought them in the fold, and then they were involved in every discussion thereafter.
So I got involved with the locals when I couldn't help myself. I started thinking, I don't want to go all into this the way that I did with the previous effort with trying to get an MLS team here. I felt like I invested too much emotionally, and I just wanted to be a fan and kind of ride it in, and had some ideas. And with the club side, I started pitching them on name ideas, I pitched them on concepts, and they really listened to my ideas. And so from there, it was just kind of a little bite at the apple, and then I kept nibbling and said, okay, well, I'm gonna go to supporters meetups now, and I'm so invested in this club because they really listened to me as ideas. That emotional payoff led me into the locals in terms of what wasn't the locals at that point, but was Daryl and Steve, who had tried to start supporters groups for 2 to 3 different failed club efforts here in town, or had been a part of the Deep End or been a part of North County Battalion before, as well as American Outlaws. And they said, well, start a supporters group. This club is coming. It's a USL club. We're going to have a club.
LA is just an extremely legal place, is what I was trying to say.
Oh, 100%.
So that's like partially why documents like this take forever to get through there.
In conversations with Daryl, it was very apparent to me that there was a need for structure, and that's the one thing that I was pretty good at because of my experience with other supporters group before, with my friends in the Black Army 1850 over in Los Angeles, and then in what became the 3252. I think I learned that it's super important to have bylaws in place.
So in the build-up to that meeting at Thunderhawk, there was always like the elephant in the room for Steve and I think, and Drew to a certain extent, because the conversations that existed previously for a long time, even through the Soccer City effort of establishing a potential supporters group as a nonprofit.
There's formalities that we have to have as a group. You know, we have to be an incorporated business to take people's money and not let it affect anybody's bank account. And in order to have be an incorporated business, we have to have bylaws, and we have to have, there's structures that are put in place that you have to have.
Not having any experience in any of those things, it was really difficult to wrap our heads around the things that we needed to do and the things that we didn't need to do, because the second part of that, the things we didn't need to do, we had no idea what we should be doing.
And you start like looking around, some groups have their bylaws available online, but I don't want to just like copy paste somebody else's bylaws. Like I wanted to find our own.
Before I at least had a chance to wrap my head around what was happening, Jerry had just stepped in and said, okay, here's what the 3 things that we absolutely need in order to file our paperwork and establish a nonprofit and move forward as a corporation. Here are the things that we need.
I came prepared that day because they had previously told me, hey, we really need help with this. And I said, okay, I'll get it done. And I walked in with 16 pages, I think it was, and I told them, hey, don't be overwhelmed. We can build upon this. I put together something that I thought would be just a skeleton, kind of looking at it as this is something that I can bring to the guys, and then together we'll build upon it so that they feel ownership to it. It happens where family comes first, other things come first. So
I was kind of blown away. I think Steve and Drew were too, that it went from being this problem that we had no idea how to solve or how difficult it was going to be to solve, to somebody walking in and saying, here's how you solve it, and here's all the things.
We started going through it, going page by page and breaking it down, that I think that day we left with 16 pages filled of notes.
Yeah, it was a full, total read-through that we started, literally read every word from the very beginning and fully understood them. That way, from then on, we were all on the same page of what the structure and the foundation of this group was supposed to be.
And we're able to build something that fit what the vision that we wanted, the vision of the supporters group in general. That's one thing. If bylaws are brought in and just somebody says, this is it, this is what we're going to be doing, it's very difficult to have buy-in from everybody. And so when you have at least a few people that feel like they're part of it and there's ownership to that, then it's much easier to talk to people and truly say, hey, we need to follow these bylaws.
And at that point, it was like, okay, I'm completely into this. I don't have a choice. I'm a framer of a constitution somewhat. I have to believe in this new nation, and I have to be somebody who uses my talents and my skills to benefit this group and benefit this community.
That was also a bonding moment, right? Because we had met, the four of us, before that a couple times, but that was also like, we were still getting to know Jerry for who Jerry was. And like I said, we knew Drew a little bit beforehand, but we were really getting to know who Drew was and how much work he was willing to put in and what his commitment level was and that kind of stuff. So that's really when it became like us two and Jerry and Drew like joining on. That's when it became like the four of us really going from there and starting that all. So that's kind of when things kicked off even further from a leadership perspective, because we had the four of us and then we started trying to get, you know, more help, more people.
So I was very much just a fan going down there to collect a free beer, maybe a shirt if they had my size, which they never did, and you know, to hang out with those people.
That event was awesome. I mean, it was great to again meet people and talk to supporters, and not just supporters that are going to be in the supporters group, but supporters of the club in general, right? Families, see the people that, you know, go to pubs and bars in the mornings for EPL games, come out and support their local team, future local team. That kind of made it real, that so many people showed up. And yeah, I mean, I was totally on board for 2020, right? Through the whole Soccer City campaign and everything like that, I wanted something fast. I wanted something now, right? I wanted something to get going, and I wanted a club to get in the stands and sing and cheer for.
In my head, there was no way we were going in March. It was a whole year out still. And I remember they, you know, okay, everybody get out to the outside patio, and as they were making those announcements, I remember I was in that little, next to the beer cart, and that's when, you know, Warren stood on the cushions.
First of all, cheers! Cheers to all of you.
I remember I had a beer in my hand, we were hanging out, you know, kind of in the patio area outside of Modern Times. And he said, we're going to play in 2020, starting in 2020.
So we're playing in the 2020 season.
And everybody went, yay! And I went, oh, no.
It was almost like the beard immediately kicked in. Everybody was like a little bit caught in the energy of the moment. And I remember hearing the news and then them saying March, and then having to like almost a minute later look over at, I think I was sitting next to Kim D and Steve, and I said, hey, wait, they mean this March? Steve had this look in his eye, and I was like, oh, wow. Well, okay. You guys have a lot of work to do. That's going to be fun to watch. And then it really rapidly developed, like the announcement and the buzz and everything that happened, and they talked about signing up for season tickets. I remember everybody breaking their phones out and trying to make sure that they had gotten registered, so we clogged up the internet there for about 10 desperate minutes.
For me, it was really a matter of this is it. They're saying 2020. Of all these people that I've met through the process of everything soccer related over the last 6 years of my life, I believe that these people mean what they say, and they mean that they can make this happen, and it will be successful in this amount of time. So then it was kind of a, holy shit, we got a lot of work to do too.
I had been hoping up to that point that they would say 2021 because it seemed more realistic. Knowing what it takes to build a supporter group and how much time and effort goes into it, time being the main thing, that's nowhere close to enough time to build a strong supporters group. And by strong, I mean big in numbers. You could build a supporter group, no problem. And I think there was already that buy-in regardless. So we were gonna have a group. But I just knew what lay ahead was not gonna be easy. And I knew that those of us that were excited to build a supporter group had a lot of work to do.
I got there a little bit early. I think Daryl and Beth were there. we were just kind of easing into the idea of we're going to get serious. And Daryl had this kind of like, a lot of stuff coming today.
Jerry had been so prominent in structurally building what was the locals at that point and what would become the locals, that nobody had a problem kind of stepping back and saying, we're going to let this guy kind of direct this meeting.
It was definitely something that I wanted to do as well, and I think I had mentioned to them, hey, I'll take over on this one, especially now that we have some bylaws that we can talk about. And so that's what we're looking at. We have bylaws now. We have code of conduct that we are still kind of perfecting, and we need all of you. If you want to be involved in that process, please reach out. We want you to help us out with that. We need to start talking about these bylaws and say, hey, this is what we're building. We need you to help us build them and make them better and better. That's going to be one of the biggest points that we're going to hit is we want to make sure that we help other nonprofits around town and that we raise funds and help out San Diego. It's not about us, it's about the community. We are independent. That's another thing you guys need to know. Like, we are completely independent from the club.
And permanently independent.
Permanently independent, absolutely. And it's in the
My first impression of Jerry was that he was a very serious guy.
that we can differentiate between what a fan and a supporter is. A fan is somebody that supports their club, that buys their gear, goes to the games, will sit, and when something happens on the field, they're paying attention to the game. I mean, they're embedded still within the club. But a supporter is like an ultra fan. A supporter is somebody that will not watch the game. They'll stand for 90 minutes plus. They will chant, they will sing, they will wave flags. They will lose some of their experience to give the rest of the stadium an experience.
And Jerry has that ability to make people feel like they want to be a part of something bigger than that.
If you haven't stood in a place like the 3252, like the Timbers Army, like the Cauldron and SKC, of that style, like the BVB, the Yellow Wall, like if you haven't stood... Like the Outlaws and Azteca, exactly. We want you to feel what a supporter culture is and then buy into it because it's something that is, like I'm getting chills. It's really, really special. What we're doing here is we're trying to bring supporter culture to San Diego the way that I don't think that it's really been seen yet.
Yeah, Jerry very much took over and was very, I wouldn't say serious, but very direct in the way that he was like, okay, this has to happen and it has to happen now.
So 2020, like it's happening. It's like I said, it's go time. The game's on. We have a set date. That being said, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a shit ton of work to be done. And so we need every single one of you to be a part of this.
Like he said, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of organization to build in the next 6 months before we can even get to the point where we start deciding what flags we want to start waving.
So in San Diego, we're trying to build something that's probably never been done here before, ever. As you mentioned, the supporter culture in soccer is totally different from what you're going to see in any sport. This is going to outlive us. How many clubs and teams have left San Diego? Too many to name. It is up to us to create that culture where there's no freaking way the USL club is going to leave us. And it's up to us to make that happen. And so that's what we're here for. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that because it's fucking go time. Like,
This is getting really serious. And I'll be honest, I was still sitting there doing typical Tom. I was enjoying a good beer. I was having good company with friends. And I was very much going, man, this is a lot of work for you guys.
This is about a culture. It's not about any individual. And what we're building here is for the city. What we're gonna leave here, like literally, we're at a point where we're creating history. Like we're gonna build a foundation to where our children and our children's children are gonna be able to walk into this and say, this is ours.
Everything here is what we're building right now belongs to every single one of us. It doesn't belong to a group. It belongs to everyone, even the people that aren't necessarily coming inside of this section. Again, we are building a supporters culture that puts on display something that makes somebody else's experience inside of that stadium even better. And these are the things that we're leaving for the next generation of people that are raised into this culture. And that this is how you behave as a fan in San Diego. This is what we represent. This is what you're being brought into. So this belongs to all of us as we're building it. So just keep that in mind. Right now, it's important to just concentrate on building an organization that represents what we believe we should represent inside of San Diego.
So, with that being said, there's 4 of us now that are kind of in contact with the club and getting things going, but we need all of you. And that's the reason this has been happening. We've done this twice now, right? Coronado Brewing, Three Punks in Chula Vista. This is the first North County meeting. We're going to do one in El Cajon. We're trying to hit everybody and make sure that everybody has a chance to come and hang out and make sure that you understand, like, we need you. And so that meeting was really, really important to establish the urgency of the amount of things that we needed to do and how quickly we needed people to be involved and to really just dive in. It's basically saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we need you for. Please help us. Dive in along with us and let's make this thing happen. Before we call it official and call it done, I recommend you each pick somebody that you've never met that you thought was interesting and you go introduce yourselves, say hi, and let's just start conversation going. We have to get this going. Quality over quantity. At the beginning, quality over quantity always. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go grab more beers. All right, cheers. Continue conversation, guys.
So structurally, yeah, I think that was where the bones were assembled of what became the locals, and so many of the people that are part of the actual organization they came from that meeting. They got a chance to see from that meeting just how organized and directed the group intended on being. So I think that was like a turning point in the growth of the supporters group as a whole. But personally also, that was kind of the beginnings of me peeling away from the group, because I think that meeting happened in, was it September? And my daughter was due in December at that point. So I kind of had it in my head and knew that on the horizon for me, as this thing was building up to really getting to fever pitch, at some point I was going to have to just step away and let other people do it. So I think it was maybe a couple weeks after that I had actually texted Drew and Steve and Jerry and said, I think it's probably time for me to step away and you guys to keep moving forward without me, because I have this other thing that needs my undivided attention. And if you guys need me for anything, I'm happy to help if I can, but like I don't know that I can be in the middle of all of this right now, because I think I'll probably be slowing you guys down more than I'll be helping.